your new friend Ty.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Tea Party Podcast. It's the podcast where you find new friends and new music. This week I'm joined by a founding member of the band Godhead, but you might have heard him in your favorite TV show or video game. Today, he's here to talk about the brand new album he's releasing March 26th. Let's welcome to the show Jason Charles Miller. Jason, how the heck are you?
Hey man, I'm good. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. It is cold as all heck up here in the Northwest.
Yeah. Well, you know, I relocated to California quite a few years ago now, and it's I'm embarrassed to tell you that it's 65 degrees today in February.
That's almost worth the relocation itself, I feel like.
It's up there, yeah.
Especially when I think it's like 19 degrees here today.
Mm-hmm.
But guys, before we get too far into this week's episode, this episode is brought to you by Farm Jam Festival, a real farm with real people and real music taking place in Colville, Washington, Labor Day weekend. And if you're following us on Facebook at Tea Party Podcast or on Instagram at Radio Guy Ty, then you saw the big announcement last week. Tyler Farr will be headlining Saturday night out on the farm. Plus, friends of the show, Jesse Quandt and Court Carpenter, they'll be taking the stage, as well as the one and only DJ Maddie doing his thing between sets and at late night. You can get your tickets at farmjamfestival.com, but don't wait because these tickets are definitely going to sell out.
Oh my goodness, I want to get on that bill.
Right? Well, I think I might know somebody that can help you out.
All right, let's talk after the show. If not this year, next year for sure.
Definitely.
It's time to tee off with Ty and today's guest, Jason Charles Miller. Here comes the first four.
Here we go with question number one. If you couldn't be in music or in the voiceover industry, what job would you have, Jason?
You know what? I might be a farmer. Actually, I have a lot of family roots in farming. I even have a bunch of my cousins actually farm on the New Jersey-Pennsylvania border. So we have a family farm that's been in the family since like 1895. So maybe I would do that.
That makes it easy then.
Yeah, and if not, and maybe while I was farming, I would also be a writer. You know, because I love writing songs. But if that's part of that bubble that you put me in, maybe I'd write books or something.
I feel like that's a semi-transferable skill.
Somewhat. You know what? It's crazy. I've written a lot of songs with like people who maybe they're not as experienced songwriters, but they're television writers or they're comedy writers. We sit down to write a song and wow, are they great. So my feeling is if you're a good writer, it can apply to different mediums more accessibly than you might first think.
I could definitely see that. I mean, if you've got those creative juices working in the right direction, you might not be the best in the other venues, but I feel like you can definitely add to them at least.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this one? Everybody hates this question because it's hard to answer, but what is your favorite song of all time?
Ooh, you know what? I don't hate that question at all. My favorite song of all time. I will say this though, it is hard to answer, but I don't hate the question. I would have to say probably The Chain by Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, that's a good pick.
Yeah.
Okay. How about this one? What character from TV or movies would you bring to life if you could?
I probably Gandalf the Grey.
Ooh, that's a good answer too.
He's technically from books first, but you know he's been in enough movies now. I think that people know who he is.
I think so. Okay, here we go. Last question of the final four. If you could have an unlimited supply of anything, whiskey, tacos, guitar strings, scotch tape, whatever it is except for money, what would it be?
An endless supply of money printing machines. How about that?
That's a good loophole.
Yeah. I'm always looking for the loophole.
I like it. Well, Jason, man, that was the first four. Thanks for playing along. But now let's turn the attention to you. Give us kind of a high level Wikipedia version of growing up and tell us how you got into music.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I was born in Maryland, but I grew up in Virginia. in Fairfax County, Virginia, which was close enough to D.C. to where once I became a teenager, I could drive into D.C. and see shows, but far enough away from D.C. to where I had some friends that wouldn't set foot in there. So I sort of had the good combination of both worlds, I would say. I grew up in the woods, and no sidewalks, and the closest kids my age were like a half-mile walk through the woods. So I definitely had a extensive Lego and Matchbox car collection because I was, you got to do something to keep yourself occupied. But I had been singing in front of crowds since I was about 5 years old, and started in school theater and community theater, and started playing in my first bands when I was 14, and always just kind of knew right off the bat that I wanted to make a living in entertainment, specifically as a singer. So so far so good.
Is it true that you started off singing opera music?
Well, actually, I didn't start off singing opera music, but I did sing opera music. So when I got to high school and started doing choir, the choir director was like, I think you should, we see some potential in you, and let's step it up a notch. I think you should start taking some private voice lessons. So I started taking lessons with an opera teacher, and learned amazing techniques that I think I automatically still apply to this day when I'm on tour or when I'm performing. It really helped me save my voice, when you're playing like 39 shows in a row, which I've done before, and just a lot of like good, solid vocal techniques that don't necessarily sound like opera, but just help you keep a healthy voice.
And I feel like for somebody that plays as often as you do across so many different genres, that may be one of like the most important pieces for you, just for longevity's sake.
I would say so, because I make so much of my living with my voice. I started getting into voice acting when Godhead was in between tours. And I've been doing it for like 17 years now. So if I'm not singing on something, I'm talking on something, So good vocal health is absolutely essential.
Oh, for sure. And you bring it up, it's kind of hard to place you in a specific genre because you've sort of done it all, from industrial to alt rock, now southern rock and country. How beneficial is it for you to be able to kind of sort of pick and choose what you want to do next and not be pigeonholed into a specific style that you might get bored of?
Well, I feel like anybody can do it. It's just taking that leap of faith, right? Like I knew that when Godhead was starting to slow down and we weren't doing as much, that when I was going to start to put out solo material, that I wanted to do something completely different. And Godhead was very industrial. We had a lot of electronics in our sound. We had a lot of programmed things in our sound, even when we were playing live. All of our vocals were real, and all of our guitars and drums and bass were real, but we had like extra electronics that played along with us, and our drummer played to a click, because in order to reproduce what we would put on our records, we would probably need 9 people on stage and 4 more keyboards. So, and we couldn't afford to do that. So anyway, I slowly started, I'm like, I'm going to break everything down to vocals and one instrument, to vocals and guitar, right? Because someone once said, and I can't remember who, and probably more than one person said this, that if a song doesn't sound good with just a vocal and a guitar, then it's probably not a good song. And I think that there are exceptions to that rule, but I think that that's a pretty good rule. So growing up in Virginia, listening to country music, it felt completely natural to me that's what I was going to start writing. It wasn't even really a conscious effort. It was just, what am I inspired to write? What am I inspired to produce as a performer and as a musician? So everyone wants to pigeonhole you, and of course people know me for different things. It's really funny because I've sung on 2 or 3 really big video game soundtracks, so on Metal Gear Rising. I sang the big song in that game. I just sang the theme song to Final Fantasy XIV, and now I have 3 songs in Cyberpunk 2077. And there are fans that only know me as the video game singer guy, right? There are other fans that only know me as a voice actor. There are other fans that only know me as the guy that's on Geek and Sundry playing Dungeons and Dragons and teaching people how to play role-playing games. And then there's, hopefully the largest number of fans know me as, the solo country Southern rock singer. But I appear to be different things to different people, but that's just fine because all of them, I'm uniquely being myself in them, and there's nothing I hide from any of the other places, if that makes sense. I kind of just lay it all out there.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the reasons that I was so excited to talk to you, just because it's not the typical just musician interview. I mean, you've got your hand in so many different realms. One of them, in fact, the video game realm, I happened to mention your name in conversation with my little brother, who's a Twitch streamer, and he had come across your name in looking through the credits of different video games that he plays. One of the big games he plays is Hearthstone, World of Warcraft, and just those sort of things. Street Fighter, I think he mentioned. And it's just one of those things. We have almost nothing in common, Jason, except apparently we're a fan of your work.
Now he likes you. I hope that makes you cooler.
I don't know that I'm ever going to be cool in his eyes, but I try.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was at Shooter Jennings' Christmas party last year. Obviously, no one really had a Christmas party this year, but last year, as in 2019, I suppose. And he was like, "You got to talk to my cousin. He's like the biggest video game fan." And so I was just nerding out with my cousin, and like Shooter was way more impressed with my video game credits than my music, I think. But that's okay.
That's actually really funny. But before we get into all of that, because I do have some more questions there, I want to kind of circle back before we get into your new album and what you're doing with country music, kind of all the way back to the beginning. We've talked about this band Godhead, but I'm not sure that there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast in particular that are familiar with it. I mean, you're the founder of that band. How did that creation come together? And then how did you guys get hooked up with Marilyn Manson?
Right. Yeah. So Godhead started when I was in college at George Mason University in Virginia. And we actually started under a different name. We were called Blind because the world is blind, man, or whatever. Society's blind, whatever that.
It's a very rock name.
Right. Turned out that there was another band called Blind in Europe, and the first label that wanted to sign us was out of Europe, so we needed to change our name. And so I thought Godhead was a name that I always sort of had earmarked somewhere. I was like, that would be a cool name for a band, man. So when I had an opportunity to take it, and of course this was in the 90s before all the great band names were taken, now if you want to form a new band, it has to be like, let's like call it 4 random words, red apparatus jumpsuit. I always use that as an example because I just feel like, you've got to just like pick random words now.
I don't think you're too far off there.
Yeah, that's probably what they did, I'm guessing. But anyway, so we really started cutting our teeth up and down the East Coast as a regional touring act, and our manager at the time was able to get a label in Europe interested in us, and then we toured over there, and then we toured the country of the U.S. a lot, and then Marilyn Manson's manager found us when we were on tour and offered us a deal to go to their label, and that changed everything. It's interesting, it definitely was all business. It's like I didn't. He was good to us, but I didn't really know him that well. We toured together, but we would only see him like once every 3 days. He was this mysterious person till the day that his label stopped. You know what I mean? Like it was just sort of like, okay, this is awesome. Like they're giving us a chance, and we love this opportunity, and definitely we're able to parlay it into a career. And I'm definitely thankful for what they did for us, for sure.
Well, so how much different was that being really the only artist on this label versus what you've seen since then, and I guess before that? Or was it different? I guess
it helped. Like a lot of things led to other things. So, we got to play the Ozfest that year, and there were so many great bands on the Ozfest that year. Disturbed, Linkin Park, Slipknot, Mudvayne, all on the same bill.
Wow!
And of course Ozzy, and actually that year it was Black Sabbath reunion that year, and how cool was that to watch Tony Iommi jam every night? And Black Label Society was on the bill, so it's just packed full of legendary artists, and then we actually left Ozfest to go tour with Rammstein for a month, so that was pretty incredible. And I think that the connections that they had at the time were very at the top of everybody's list, and so it enabled us to give us a lot of incredible opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, when you mention those names, those are all bands that I remember listening to as I was growing up and how big they were. I mean, that had to be, I don't know if necessarily shock is the right word, but it had to be completely different than when you guys were just touring up and down the East Coast.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so we went from, maybe getting lucky, and we did get really lucky, and we opened for GWAR across the country, and so we're playing packed clubs, small theaters, to where are we playing today on the Ozfest? Mile High Stadium. Cool. And actually I think it was Ozfest where we played the Gorge in George.
Okay, right up here in my neck of the woods.
Yeah, so all of a sudden we're playing like the most legendary places to play in the country.
So I have to ask you, how is it touring with GWAR? Because I feel like that's got to be kind of its own animal with what they do on stage.
It was trial by fire, let me tell you. We said to ourselves after the second night, because the first night started in Washington, D.C., and we had enough of our own fans in the crowd that night that the crowd was good to us. But the second night, I believe we're in Philadelphia or something, and we found out how GWAR fans treat the opening act. And that is, they throw things at you, they yell things at you, they flip things at you. And actually, I for years afterwards would not look the crowd in the face anymore at any concert I would do, because when I would look down in the crowd, I would, as soon as I looked anyone in the eye, they would flip me off immediately.
Jeez.
We probably got $5 in change that we pulled off the stage every night. I mean, their fans are just brutal. If you're not GWAR, they do not care. But I will say this, it's almost like a mob mentality, because the same guy that was flipping me off then bought our t-shirt later. We did very well on merch on that tour. So somebody had to be liking us, right?
I would think so. I mean, I think GWAR shows themselves just kind of breed this fun anger, I guess, where it's kind of fun just to hate everybody around you. And you guys just kind of caught the brunt of that, it sounds like.
Yeah. But, we said if we can make it through this, we'll make it through anything. And we did. We were on tour with them for like 2 months. And we just, the best thing to do in that situation is ignore the hecklers and just do your show. And I think it made me a stronger person, I'll tell you that.
I bet. So moving on from that, when was it that you decided that you kind of wanted to go out on your own as a solo artist? Was there a moment that you're like, I should do this by myself, or was it kind of a phase out sort of a thing?
I suppose it was a phase out. Manson's label ended in like 2002, and we put out 3 more albums after that, and a remix album as well. But we put out 3 more albums after that, but all on newer labels and labels that were just getting off the ground. And I tell you what, there's nothing more important than your support team, right? You can put out the most amazing piece of music, the most amazing artistic thing that you could be the most proud of ever, but if your behind the scenes team isn't firing on all cylinders, it's not going to be seen or heard by the people it should be. So we just started to get demoralized. We were doing what we thought was our best artistic work, but was doing each one was returning diminishing returns in the marketplace. Mainly because if you change a label for every release and change your team for every release, it's just harder to get those fires going again. And any artist, I would argue, any artist that you see today has that's at the top of their game, has an amazing support system behind the scenes that you don't even know about. I'm sure you do, but I mean, like as far as the average fan, wouldn't necessarily know about everything that's happening behind the scene.
No, absolutely. And I think for the average everyday fan, they just kind of assume that making music is all fun and games, and there's no work that goes into it behind the scenes, and that you can just go out there and if you've got good music, you stand on stage and play it and that's it. And there's so much more to it that I'm sure that you learned through that entire process. And I'm sure you're still learning it as you're in the industry now even.
Oh yeah. It just can't be overstated. But the thing is now things change every 6 months, so you just kind of have to roll with it and try to figure out what the next thing to do is. And it's funny that you were mentioning Twitch, because ever since touring kind of stopped, I started up my own Twitch channel, and I've been streaming acoustic concerts twice a week. On Mondays, I have a guest. So every week I have a different guest, and I run it like a Nashville songwriter round. We go back and forth. And then on Wednesdays, I do a request show. I have a list of 100 and let me see. I've got a list right now of 153 songs that I know. And
nice.
Yeah. And so you can pick from that, and I'll do whatever people request. It's pretty fun. I mean, some of my originals on there, and there's some Godhead songs I do acoustically. But now Twitch, the music department at Twitch, has noticed, and they're starting to feature me on the front page. So last night I was on the front page of Twitch, and
wow.
I ended up having like 112,000 live viewers. It was kind of insane.
Yeah, that's almost like, that's a live concert,
right?
At a decent sized venue.
Yeah, so I'm just trying, and look, it keeps my chops up and it keeps me busy. Thankfully, I have been busy this whole time, and I'm actually working on music for 3 separate video games right now, which I'm really excited about. And some of it actually is very, you might expect, video gamey sounding, and some of it is there's some of my own style in there too. So I'm really grateful for the work that I've had, especially during these weird times. But I love connecting with people, and I think that this makes me at least feel like I'm on tour a little bit. I do get feedback. People write in the chat as you play, and then you can answer back to them, and it's really fun. I love the interacting and the community aspect of Twitch. It really is working well for musicians now.
Well, and jumping back to the games, which I think is what most people know Twitch for. I don't think there's a lot of people that their first thought when they think of Twitch is music. And you're right, that is kind of a bubbling up on there, especially during this pandemic. But focusing on the games and stuff that you do, the voice work that you do there, do you ever go back and play those specific games just for fun, or to go back and listen to yourself, or do you kind of record it and walk away?
Oh, if I have time, I definitely try to find myself in games. I mean, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I remember in World of Warcraft, there was a character I played, Prince Valinor, with the power of the Tesseract, or whatever it was. And I would try to go find him with my character and kill him. It's very cathartic, killing yourself.
I bet.
In game.
So on top of that, you do the voiceover work for the video games, you do music, but then did you also do some work for NASA?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So I got asked by a representative at NASA who does a lot of their video work, their like presentations to the public, if I would narrate a video that would be playing at the Goddard Space Center and online. And it was about a satellite that they were launching to the asteroid Bennu. And man, it was really great. It's like it's just a little 8-minute informative video that they play at the Goddard Space Center, but you can also see it on YouTube. They have a version of it on there, and it literally started. I think the opening line was something like, space, home to millions of worlds. I'm like it was the coolest job ever. And now I can, sit around when I'm 80 at a bar and go like, yeah, I used to work for NASA, and I wouldn't be lying.
You wouldn't. That is fantastic. So out of everything that you've done, is there one credit that you tout more than all of them? Obviously, NASA's got to be up there, I feel like.
NASA's way up there for sure. It kind of changes. But one thing that I was really kind of tickled about was I was in like 6 episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and in one episode, the show creators thought it would be cool to make the character look like me. This is back when I was clean shaven, but they sort of take a ancient view of my tattoos and like turn that into something like how it would look back then, and that was really fun to sort of see an animated character of myself.
I bet that actually sounds really cool. That's one of my lifelong dreams, is for somebody to animate me in something. I don't care what, just put me in it. I want to see what I look like as a cartoon.
Yeah.
So now that we focused on everything else, how about we talk about the real reason you're here? And that is the new album that you've got out in March. It's called From The Wreckage Part 1. And without giving too much away, is it safe to assume that this is the first half of a project?
I can neither confirm nor deny. Yeah, no, of course. So what I'm doing is I'm putting out 2 7-song albums this year, which is really like part of the same album, but I'm splitting it up over 6 months. So in October, I'm going to put out part 2, and there's a little bit of a business reason for that. I have my own label now, and my idea was that, look, we don't know exactly when things are going to start back up again, right? But I don't want to just sit around and not put out new music. So I went back and I looked at all of these songs that I wrote for my 2018 album, In the Wasteland. And, I was on Sony Music at the time, and I probably wrote 45 songs for that album. And, the album is only 11 songs deep. And I was like, man, there's so many songs I believe in here that I want people to hear. And now's the perfect time for me to release them. But of course, I'm always tweaking them, and I'm always adding new ones. So this is sort of pieces from that time, but also new things too. Also covers that I've always wanted to put out. Just a way to get new music to people that is representative of me, but that I don't know if we can tour on them or not. So sort of my general plan is, part 1 in March, part 2 in October, and then another full-length album in the middle of 2022. So I'm committed. I'm committed to getting all this music out to people. And these are songs that I passionately believe in, that perhaps an A&R rep at Sony was in a bad mood the day that I played it for him. You know what I mean? And so now it's my choice to put them out.
Well, and I've had a chance to listen to this album, and I absolutely love it. My only complaint is that I got it in a Dropbox, so I have to manually switch between songs. So I can't wait for it to. But as soon as it's on streaming services, I'll definitely get it there and then definitely buy it. But before we get too far into discussing the actual meat and potatoes of the album, I want to give everybody a taste of your style off of this record. You released the first single off of it back in November. It's called Better Late Than Never, and it features some people that country music fans might know. Adam Schoenfeld on guitar, he's played with Tim McGraw, and Cowboy Eddie Long, who plays with Jamie Johnson. First, tell us how the song came about for you, and then tell us how you got them involved.
Okay, so it was a song. I had this title in my head for the longest time because I'll write down titles all the time. And obviously, the phrase better late than never is something that people say all the time. But I thought, it might be a cool subject for a song. Just have to sort of hone it in and figure what it's about. And Jonathan Tyler, who is in Nikki Lane's band and is an amazing solo artist in his own right as well. He was living in LA at the time, and we got together to write, and I threw out that title and we just went for it. The song is basically about just somebody getting ghosted and wanting to know why, and not even really caring if at this point the relationship's over, so you don't care to get back together with the person. You just want to know why. I think everyone's, if you've had a romance or two in your life, weird things like that have happened. So I figured people could relate to it. Men and women could relate to something like that. I think everyone's been ghosted a time or two. And so that's sort of what the song was about. And then the great thing about living in Los Angeles and having my own recording studio, but also spending a lot of time in Nashville, is I have a lot of really talented friends. So Adam, for example, who played on my 2012 album and a little bit on In the Wasteland also, happened to be on tour with Tim McGraw. And I said, hey, man, do you have any time before sound check? I'd love to record you to come over and play on some of these songs. Because guys with talent like Adam and with talent like Cowboy, you just give them a song and sort of let them do their thing. And that's exactly what happened. And magic happened with his performance and with Cowboy's performance too. Same thing with Cowboy. I'm like, dude, I'm coming to your hotel. I'm going to grab your pedal steel. We're going to throw you on as many songs as we can, and I'll get you back to the venue before sound check.
That seems like the easiest thing in the world. But here, let's let everybody take a listen to it. This one is the first single off of his upcoming album. It's called Better Late Than Never by Jason Charles Miller.
Soon I'll find relief. Gonna carry this load till the day I It's hard to show my face now that you're not around. But here I stand, just trying to find a clue to the mystery of what happened to me and you. Give me a sign. Something will be better than nothing. It's been a long, long time, but it's better late than never. Yeah, it's better late than never. Oh, it's better late than never. Yeah, it's better late than never. Oh, it's better late than never.
And that one came out late last year. It's called Better Late Than Never by today's guest, Jason Charles Miller. And Jason, that's the first single off of the upcoming album, From The Wreckage Part 1. And we already talked about the artists that helped you out with that song. But this entire album is kind of built in that same way where you're just collaborating with your friends on almost every song. Who else did you partner up with on this album?
I'm a stone soup kind of guy. You know what I mean? Like, I love to throw more things in the mix just to flavor it up. You know, so Kenny Aronoff is playing drums on a track. Dwayne Betts, who's a dear friend of mine from the Allman Betts band, I got him to throw a solo down. Who am I missing? I've got to think about this for a second. A lot of great Los Angeles musicians played on it, like Alex Burke, who is just an amazing piano player. I'm all for whatever makes the song the best. You know, I have a live band that I love, and the advantage or disadvantage of being a solo artist is, you know, everything's kind of on you, right? So if a certain musician isn't available for a tour, you kind of have to get that group together. So I try to throw them on as well as much as I can. But if I'm living for the song, I always try to think of who would be the best musician for this specific song. You know, and
that's such a great way to look at it.
Yeah, you know, I think also with Godhead, you know, we were for so many years, for like 7 albums or something, it was always the 4 of us. And that when it's a band, that's what it should be, right? If this is a band album, it should be this. And it should be these guys or girls that are in the band. But when it's a solo record, I think that's when you've got more depth to kind of do whatever you want. For lack of better sophistication. I don't know.
No, I completely get what you're saying. And so you've got this album coming out March 26th. Where can people keep up with what you have going on? Obviously on Twitch, but what are your other social media handles?
Yeah, luckily I'm Jason Charles Miller, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. I just started doing stuff on TikTok recently. On Twitter, I'm Jason C. Miller because my name's too long. But if you type in Jason Charles Miller, you'll find me. Luckily, I've got that blue check mark everywhere.
That makes it easy then,
yeah.
Especially when it's just your name. Okay, so I've got one more question before we get into our final 4, and it's a question that I've been kind of waiting to ask you this whole week because I'm very interested in what Starter Kit is.
Well, the good thing is you can watch it on Amazon, which is kind of neat. It's on Amazon Prime. Ooh. So Starter Kit is a show that I hosted a couple of years ago. And, once again, we were talking about growing up in the woods of Virginia with no one really around me. Well, before he moved away, the one neighbor that was close enough to me his name was John Franklin, and he played Dungeons and Dragons. And so ever since I was a little kid, I played Dungeons and Dragons with my neighbor, John Franklin, until he moved away. So then all I had were a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons rule books and modules that I would just sort of read and, pretend I was playing, by myself or whatever. Luckily, and later in life, I got to play again. And that's what Starter Kit is. It's teaching people how to play different role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. We also do Numenera, 7th Sea, Phoenix Dawn Command, Vampire the Masquerade. So it's short episodes. They're all about 45 minutes in length. And we break down different complicated games like this so that people who have never played D&D before can watch this and hopefully get a good grasp on how to play the game without watching one of the longer form shows and being completely lost.
That seems like a fantastic way to try and learn these games. There's going to be so many people going out trying to find all of these different things after this, just because you're in so many different spaces. And Jason, man, it has been an absolute blast here. I'm so excited for the new record. Thank you so much for jumping on here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And like I said, we end every show the same way. It's called the Final Four. Just like the first four, it's 4 semi-tough questions. You up for it?
All right, sure, of course.
It's time for the Final Four.
Awesome. Here we go. The first question of the Final Four. What is your favorite venue that you've ever played at?
Oh, man.
See, they're not easy questions.
No. You know what? I'll say this. My favorite venue that I ever played was playing the Patriot Center in Fairfax, Virginia, because when I was going to college there, this is the basketball arena that the basketball team plays at George Mason University. And when I was going to college, I worked there putting down the chairs and pulling the chairs back up and putting down the basketball floor and pulling it up. And then getting to play a concert there, opening, but still being on the bill was such a great 360 moment for me.
Kind of made all the work worth it at that point.
It did. And what was great was my boss there, his name was John Gabbard, and he was actually a really good boss. So it wasn't like I'm sticking it to the boss. It was more like he was still working there when I went to play, and I got to say hi to him, and it was a really cool moment rather than a, take this job and shove it moment. It was more of a, isn't this great moment? And that was really, really fun to be able to do that.
I bet it sounds like it. Okay, how about this one, Jason? Who are the 3 most recently played artists on your Spotify or Apple playlist?
Let me look. I'll make that easy. Well, I know one was Iron Maiden because I was just listening to them when I was in the shower. So that's one. Let's see. Hold on. I'm going to look at the list here. So yeah, so Iron Maiden, Tom Petty, and Chris Stapleton.
Okay.
And I would say I'm somewhere in there.
I would say so.
Like of those 3 artists, you could throw me in the middle.
Yeah, I was gonna say if there was 3 that I had to pick, those probably would have been on my list.
I remember one time there was a we played this gig and after the show, a rather inebriated woman came up to me and she was like, "You're like a cross between Zakk Wylde and Chris Stapleton," and I was like, wow, that is like the coolest compliment anyone's ever given me. So thank you. So, from the mouths of drunks come great praise.
Hey, sometimes it's true.
Yeah.
How about this one? What is your favorite on-stage memory?
Sorry about that. My favorite on-stage memory would be playing the Carling Festival in England and looking out and not being able to see the end of the people. That's kind of
wow,
insane, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like those European festivals are always kind of like that. There's just this massive sea of people that just goes on forever.
That and the Brazilian festivals. I haven't played any of those, but they sure look like that too.
It looks like a good time.
Brazil, it's just like, it's 500,000 people here. What?
That's insane. Okay, last question for you here, Jason.
Yeah.
If you could pick one thing for people to take away from this podcast and your music in general, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. that for them to take away that hopefully they're discovering a new artist that they haven't heard before, and hopefully I've got some songs that speak to them and let them know that they're not alone.
There you go. I love it. Jason, thank you so much, man, for jumping on here. It's been an absolute blast. We'll do it again in the future.
Okay, thanks so much.
Absolutely. And that was another episode of the Tea Party Podcast, the country music podcast where you find new friends and new music like Jason Charles Miller and his upcoming album, From The Wreckage, Part 1.
Go tee off on the like button at facebook.com/Tea Party Podcast. This has been a Tea Party Communications production. Theme music created by Jesse Quandt. Announcer voiceovers by Jay Gwynn. And as always, hosted by Ty Pisani.